sun was setting over Willow Creek National Park, casting a soft golden glow over the forest trees. Emma and Max, outdoor enthusiasts who had recently discovered their mutual love for camping, were wrapping up their 3-day hiking adventure. They were content, even jubilant, as they approached their last camping site, a secluded spot that promised peace and privacy. Setting up their tent near the base of a picturesque waterfall, they kindled a fire as darkness swelled around them. The ethereal sounds of the forest began to serenade them, owls hooting, leaves rustling, and the gentle lullaby of water trickling down the rocks. It was perfect, almost too perfect, Max thought, as he pulled out his acoustic guitar. After dinner and a few campfire songs, Max was eager to share a local legend he had stumbled upon during his research of Willow Creek. "You ready for a little local folklore?" he said, setting his guitar aside. Emma chuckled. "Oh, you know how much I love your stories. What is it this time?" "It's called the Whispering Grove," he began, adding an ominous tone to his voice. "A secluded area deep within this very park where, they say, the trees whisper to each other at night. No one knows what they say, but the tale goes that those who've heard it are never the same." Emma grinned. "Spooky, but, let me guess, nobody has any proof?" "Exactly," Max laughed. "Let's make it an adventure for tomorrow before we head back. See if there's any truth to the legend." Emma agreed, but before they could delve further into their plans, a harsh cracking sound echoed from the darkness beyond their campsite. Both startled, they listened intently, dismissing it as probably a deer or some nocturnal animal scurrying through the woods. The next morning, after a hearty breakfast, they packed a day bag and used their park map to estimate the location of the Whispering Grove. After hours of trekking through dense forest, they finally reached a grove eerily silent, except for a barely audible murmuring, a cacophony of whispers as though the trees themselves were conversing. Intrigued but not frightened, they pressed on, excited at the idea of being the first to capture any evidence of the legend. They began setting up their audio equipment when Emma stumbled upon something horrifying. A group of 4 campers turned to stone. The petrified figures were eerily lifelike, capturing what appeared to be their final moments of terror. Their faces were contorted in fear, arms reaching out as if pleading for help. Max felt a surge of dread flood over him. This can't be real. It's too horrific. Should we leave? Maybe it's a warning, Emma said, already backing away. But before they could move, the whispering of the trees grew louder, and their equipment buzzed to life, capturing the unsettling sound. Suddenly, the petrified figures seemed to shimmer momentarily, as if pleading for them to stay. "This is our chance, Emma," Max said, his eyes set on the equipment. "Proof. We can't let it go." Torn between the instinct to flee and the lure of solving the mystery, Emma reluctantly nodded. Max continued to adjust the equipment to better capture the whispering. But as the minutes passed, the whispers evolved into discernible words, sentences even, speaking a dreadful prophecy. The voices hissed, "Intruders. The petrified await release. New souls must take their place." "What does it mean, Max?" Emma's voice trembled. "Are they talking about us?" Before Max could reply, the petrified figures flickered once again and transformed back to flesh and blood. Startled, Emma and Max watched as the newly released campers gasped for air, their faces still contorted in terror. Then, without a word, they fled into the forest, leaving behind their confused saviors. The whispers ceased, and a heavy silence filled the air. Then, the ground beneath Emma and Max began to quake. Roots from the trees snaked their way around their feet, pulling them down. "We need to get out of here now," Max shouted, but it was too late. The roots solidified around them, turning their legs to stone. Slowly, the petrification ascended, creeping upwards, numbing their bodies. They reached out to each other, their eyes locking for the last time, and just like that, they became the new petrified figures of the Whispering Grove, their faces capturing their final moments of terror. The equipment buzzed to life one last time, recording their petrified screams. Now, they stood waiting for the next adventurers to wander into the Whispering Grove, their screams forever echoing in the whispers of the trees. A week later, a park ranger came across Emma and Max's deserted campsite. There were no signs of struggle, only the flickering fire and an acoustic guitar left behind. As the ranger picked up a park map left on a rock, he noticed the markings leading deep into the forest towards an area even he knew to avoid, the Whispering Grove. Shaking his head, he murmured, "Folks should know better than to go looking for legends." Little did he know, the legend had found its latest victims, and the cycle was destined to repeat one whispered prophecy at a time.
The dawn air was crisp as Alex, Sarah, Mike, and Casey stood at the base of El Capitan, the vertical rock formation towering over them like a sentinel of granite. Alex, the team leader, took a deep breath, inhaling the sharp, piney scent that filled Yosemite National Park. "Okay, folks, final gear check, then we're up," Alex commanded. They were an experienced climbing team, having conquered numerous difficult routes together. But El Capitan was different, a 3,000-foot wall that tested even the most skilled climbers. They'd chosen the nose, a route infamous for its challenges, both mental and physical. The early stages of the climb went smoothly. Alex led, placing anchors and belaying ropes, while the others followed, their faces flush with excitement. But as they reached the halfway point, something started to feel off. Sarah was the first to hear it, a faint whisper, like wind caressing the surface of the rock. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked, puzzled. "Hear what?" Mike responded, chalking up his hands. Sarah shook her head. "Never mind. Must have been the wind." They continued climbing, but Sarah heard it again, clearer this time. It was no longer a whisper, but a voice, as gritty as the rock they climbed. "You never did forgive yourself for leaving him, did you?" Her heart froze. How could the voice know about David, her former climbing partner? She'd left him in a storm on another climb, going for help but arriving too late. She looked around to see if anyone else had heard, but the others were focused on their climb. As they ascended higher, the tension among the team grew palpable. Casey, usually the jovial one, snapped at Mike over a trivial mistake. Mike, in turn, became increasingly paranoid, often glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear. "Guys, focus," Alex admonished, concerned. "We can't afford to make mistakes." Then Alex heard it, a whisper that cut through the wind, leading them into the same mistake. Alex. Alex's eyes widened. The voice was referencing an accident years ago, when he'd led a different team. A loose anchor, a terrifying fall. Alex survived, but his reputation never fully recovered. He had triple-checked everything this time, he was sure of it. As the climbers approached the great roof, an imposing overhang near the summit, the whispers became relentless. "You never were good enough," they hissed at Casey. "People only tolerate you," they snarled at Mike. The team was unraveling. Sarah climbed recklessly, her movements becoming sloppy. Mike started mumbling to himself, his eyes wild and unfocused. Casey hesitated at each grip, paralyzed by insecurity. Finally, Alex had had enough. "We need to abort," he shouted. "We're not ourselves. We're making too many mistakes." Sarah looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Is it because of David? Do you think I'll mess up like that again?" Alex stared at her, dumbfounded. "What are you talking about?" Mike started laughing hysterically. "This is all a game to you, isn't it? You bring us here, dredge up our past, and watch us squirm." Alex felt his grip on reality slipping. "I didn't do anything. We need to get down. Now!" But it was too late. Casey, overwhelmed by self-doubt, fumbled his grip and fell. The rope caught him, but the sudden force yanked Sarah off balance. She screamed, tumbling down until her rope went taut. The cascade of falls pulled at Alex and Mike, who were barely able to hold on. Shaken, they managed to stabilize themselves and assess the damage. Casey had dislocated his shoulder. Sarah was bruised but otherwise okay, and Mike seemed physically unscathed but mentally distant. "We have to descend," This is no longer just about reaching the summit, Alex declared, trying to regain some semblance of leadership. As they began their descent, Alex's radio crackled to life. It was Park Services. "Team, do you read? We have reports of unusual seismic activity. For your safety, descend immediately." Alex's blood ran cold. Was this geological phenomenon responsible for the whispers? Was El Capitan not just a rock, but a living, breathing entity that could sense their deepest fears? They finally reached the base late that evening, physically and emotionally drained. Alex looked back at El Capitan, half expecting it to loom larger, as if feeding off their misery. Instead, it stood impassive, indifferent to their triumph or failure. The team disbanded shortly after, each carrying their own scars from the climb. They never spoke of the whispers, but they haunted them still, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust. Alex continued to climb, but never again did he attempt to conquer El Capitan. He knew that some peaks are not made of just rock and ice, but of nightmares and whispers, forces far more treacherous than gravity. And so, El Capitan remained a sentry in the heart of Yosemite, its whispers carried by the wind, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most perilous journeys are not those we make up a mountain, but those that take us through the valleys of our own soul.
The sun had barely touched the treetops when Owen, Emily, and Tom met at the entrance of Pine Ridge National Park. It was a beautiful day, sun shining, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the soft breeze. A perfect day for a hike. "So, what's the plan, Trailmaster Owen?" Emily asked, pulling her hair back into a ponytail. Owen grinned, unfolding a well-worn park map. "I thought we'd try something new. Look," he pointed, "Trail X." Both Emily and Tom leaned in. Sure enough, there was a trail marked as X, skirting around the Black Lake and vanishing into the dense forest. "I've never heard of Trail X," Tom said, scratching his head, "and I've been coming here since I was a kid." "New additions, perhaps," Emily suggested, but Owen noticed her eyes narrowing. She had grown up around these woods, and an unfamiliar trail intrigued her as much as it puzzled her. They packed their bags with snacks, water bottles, and first aid supplies. Owen added a flare gun for good measure. You never knew when you might need it. As they began their trek, the forest welcomed them in its embrace. The scent of damp earth and the songs of unseen birds filled the air. They reached the Black Lake by noon, but even in broad daylight it looked dark and foreboding. "That's where Trail X starts," Owen pointed towards a narrow, overgrown path obscured by the towering pines. "Are we sure about this?" Tom asked, a hint of hesitation colouring his voice. Emily smirked. "Scared, Tommy?" "Just cautious," he retorted. And so, they stepped onto Trail X. It didn't take long for things to get weird. Owen noticed first, the compass on his watch began to spin erratically. "Hey guys, check this out!" He showed them his malfunctioning compass. "Must be some magnetic field," Tom suggested. Emily wasn't listening. She was staring at the forest around them. "Do you guys feel like the forest is different?" "Kind of heavier," Owen offered. "Exactly," Emily nodded. Before they could ponder this further, they reached a clearing. A stone altar stood at its centre, covered in moss and vines, as if reclaimed by the forest. "What the—" Tom stepped closer, curiosity overcoming his caution. The altar was adorned with strange symbols, unlike anything they had ever seen. The moment he touched the altar, a low rumble echoed through the forest, like the growl of a giant slumbering beast. Birds erupted from the treetops, flying away as if fleeing from some impending doom. "We should go," Emily said, her voice tinged with urgency. "No arguments here," Owen quickly agreed. As they turned to leave, they realized the trail behind them had vanished. The forest was now a wall of impenetrable trees and thorns. Panic surged through Owen's veins. "How is this possible?" Tom stammered. "This is bad. This is really bad," Emily muttered, her eyes wide with fear. Then they heard it, a whisper swirling through the trees, a cacophony of voices that sounded both far away and yet intimately close. "Who? Who's there?" Tom shouted, his voice shaking. No answer came, but Owen felt the atmosphere grow denser, as if the forest itself was closing in on them. "Stay close," Owen said, pulling out the flare gun. "We need to find a way out now." They pushed through the forest, guided only by instinct, since Owen's compass was still useless. Hours seemed to pass in minutes, or was it the other way around? Time felt distorted. Finally, they stumbled into another clearing, almost identical to the first, but lacking the stone altar. Exhausted, they dropped their bags and sat down. "I don't know how much more I can take," Emily said, her voice breaking. "We can't give up," Owen encouraged, though he himself was on the verge of despair. Then Tom's face went pale. "Guys," he stammered, "where's the moon?" They looked up. The sky was pitch black, devoid of stars or the moon. Yet they could see each other clearly, as if some unnatural light permeated the gloom. That's when they heard the footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the forest. They huddled close, eyes darting in all directions. A shadowy figure emerged from the trees, its form indistinct, flickering like a bad television signal. Owen aimed the flare gun and fired. The flare shot through the figure, illuminating the forest in a blaze of red light. But the figure remained, unscathed, and continued to move toward them. Suddenly, Emily started chanting the strange symbols they had seen on the altar. To Owen's surprise, the figure paused, as if confused or restrained. Taking his cue, Owen grabbed his friends. "Run!" With Emily leading the way, they bolted, not daring to look back. After what felt like an eternity, they saw it, the exit to Trail X, miraculously appearing before them. They crossed it, collapsing on the ground, gasping for air. Days later, park rangers would find 3 backpacks near the Black Lake, but no trace of Owen, Emily, or Tom. Trail X disappeared from the park maps, as mysteriously as it had appeared. Years would pass before the trio would stumble out of the forest, void of memories but full of inexplicable dread. They would not remember the shadowy figure or the stone altar, but a chilling sensation would grip them every time they heard the wind whispering through the trees, a sensation that left them questioning the very fabric of their reality, reminding them that some trails are better left undiscovered. And so, Trail X became a whispered legend of Pine Ridge National Park, a forgotten trail on an otherwise well-trodden map. But those who had ventured onto it, and had come back, would spend the rest of their lives haunted by the terror of the unknown, never fully escaping the darkness that lurked in the depths of the forest.